Welcome to another episode of The Giant Leap. Today on the show, we have two wonderful musicians who have travelled from the heart of the equator in Ecuador, raising three young boys in a big silver bus, to the remote isles of Scotland, where homeschooling and farm life go hand in hand. Baking bread each day, growing their own food, and even making and selling amazing raw cacao chocolate. These two shake up the modern family and show us that it is possible to raise children and live the simple life in today's technological world.
Mat and Stacey, welcome to the show!
Very much for having us,
guys.
So, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Ladies first.
Okay, I'll start. I'm originally from California. We met in Ecuador, and raised our boys traveling the Americas, as you mentioned, in our bus. So all the way from Canada down to Peru, I guess we were, and back up again, and then kind of got harangued over here to this part of the world in Scotland. So
harangued.
Well, kind of, it was the whole pandemic thing. It just stopped us in our tracks, and we just
shook things up a bit. Yeah, I was boomeranged because I'm originally from here, so I was boomeranged back. But we stopped. We were traveling. We were working on the road, writing and playing music and living in our bus. And then when the pandemic hit, we had to stop. So we did, and we stayed in a little hacienda place in Mexico and decided we quite liked being in one place at that point. We started growing our own food and keeping chickens, that kind of stuff. So we thought we'd do it somewhere else. We thought we'd look for a place and decided to come back to Britain and specifically Scotland for various reasons.
And for me and the boys, it was our first time. So we weren't coming back. We were going there.
Wow, that's exciting.
So you have a kind of unique lifestyle. What do you think inspired you to create the lifestyle that you guys live?
With lifestyle now or lifestyle before, or?
Let's go with the lifestyle before.
Yeah.
Okay. This is really, I think, because of music. So Stacey's a songwriter and a singer and performer. I'm also a musician and play with her, which is why we have kids, I guess.
Without the music, it's over.
So when we met, I was just kind of coming into music, and I went down to Ecuador to record my first demo album, and Matt was helping me with that process. And it was a dream of mine to go and travel and share my music with the world, because I was kind of coming into it a bit later in life, and just realized that it was a dream I had always had, but never really kind of went forward or realized it. And we had gotten together and then realized we were pregnant after our album was released.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He asked me, okay, well, what do you want to do now? And I thought, well, I still want to go travel and share my music with the world, but now with a kid, right? So,
baby.
Naively, I thought, okay, we're going to just do this. And we did it. And it became a real steep learning curve, raising a baby on the road and doing this whole new career, not really knowing what we were doing, but we somehow made it work, and got music out there, and got to do a lot of traveling, and
what was it like having a baby on the road and also a new career? What was that like? Explain it a bit more to us.
It was like I said, it was a real steep learning curve. Like motherhood in general is just a steep learning curve, because everybody can tell you how to prepare and what to do, but I think you really just it's your own journey. Everybody's going to find it different. And we were in the situation we were in, living on the road, so everything I was learning was kind of like I didn't have anything to compare it to, right? So if I was in a house, like traditional folks do, or however it is, I think it would have been kind of similar because it's all new, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know I wasn't, what's the word? Just I didn't know any better. It was just all like a challenge.
I think however you are, it's what's normal for you.
Yeah.
And speaking to this question in general, now I remember something. So it's something that I always think about. It's something my mum used to say, which is no matter what situation you're in, you just make the best of it. And then I've discovered in my life and in our life together that if you constantly are making the best of the situation you're in, then your situation just gets better and better and better. And that's when you're living on the road. It was pretty tight. Our first rig was pretty tight. We only had the one baby at that point. And I had this image in my mind of just hanging up, because we had the cloth nappies as well, or diapers if you're American.
Yeah.
And we had them, we washed them. We had no washing machines. We were washing them in either in streams or in buckets or whatever, or sometimes laundromats. And I just remember having them hung up inside the camper, and we're just sort of moving around and just bobbing and weaving underneath these things. And it's just that was the normal for us. That was our normal thing.
I like, honestly, that picture just took me back to, we were doing the same thing. We had the cloth nappies for Naya, and we were traveling doing festivals and events, and we were like, oh my God, where the hell do we wash these nappies at an event? What we can't wash that. So we actually had to use disposables when we were on the road at an event, because there wasn't even a stream. There was like literally nothing we could do. But yeah, we just had this whole pile of dirty nappies after the week, and we were like, this is disgusting. So that image just took me right back there.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So you guys would, when you're doing that in the festival, and us doing what we're doing, so however you are and whatever, it's your normal, it's what you're doing, right? That's who we are. We're just in the moment.
You just kind of learn as you go, and then the next year it kind of got easier because we got into a flow and figured it out.
And then you had another one.
Yeah, so you're like, we're starting to feel good, starting to feel easy. Let's have another baby. That's like what we do with our business. Let's make it more challenging. And then you're like, damn, why did we do this again?
Yeah, no, but I think it took less for me. I mean, I think we got into the rhythm pretty quickly, to be honest. And also, one thing that was really useful, I think, is we're both very similar, and adventurous in spirit, and very happy to just make the best of things in the moment. Plus, we, before we had the kids, we lived in different places around the world, so we'd experienced seeing how other people are raising their children, whether it's like, an indigenous woman on the side of a mountain, doing her crops in Ecuador with a baby on her back, just in a shawl, just tied on with a shawl, or sort of in the jungle, you have like kids running, like tiny little kids running barefoot in what would be considered one of the most dangerous environments on Earth, aside from Australia, Josh, I'm sure. And people raise kids in Australia, crazy. So I think so we had an awareness. We're pretty adaptable, and so it didn't take too long for it to become pretty normal. And we had a kind of a feeling about how we wanted to raise our first child, and that became the second child, and then the third. As we went along, and it was just the only thing that changed is I had to build a new bunk each time a new one would come along.
So tell us about when you came off the road. What was the transition like, and was there kind of like anything that you wanted to keep lifestyle wise that you had on the road when you kind of became more housebound, and what rules did you have that you kind of stick by as like your family code?
That's a lot of questions.
I know. Did you write that one down?
Well, remember,
we can break it down.
One of them, so one of the things we kept was homeschooling, because as we were living on the road, they weren't in a place where they went to school every day. So we did it in the bus, and I taught them, and that seemed to work well. So just kind of easily transitioned over into the house doing homeschool. So that's one thing. A lot of we were talking about a lot of habits that you pick up on the road, like just lifestyle habits, kind of also were brought over too, because I think like I said, like washing nappies, you don't necessarily have a lot of water available all the time. So it makes you really conscious of how much you're using. And that goes for like energy as well, because the bus had solar panels, so we had to make sure we were conscious of how much electricity we're using. So it kind of makes you have to be sustainable by default, if you like it or not, So our kids were pretty used to that, so I guess with energy consumption and just like lifestyle like that, like just being conscious of how much you're using and what you're
yeah, and I think also behaviorally as well, there's people say that if you want to know if a new relationship's going to work, go traveling with that person. If you really want to like squeeze it down, turn that coal into a diamond, or shatter it completely, go traveling in a small boat or in a camper van or something like that, because you'll soon realize whether you're going to get on or not. And then if you multiply that by 3 kids on top of it, the way in which you move and the way in which you live in a close space like that is it informs the way that you behave. Your environment often will inform the way that you behave, in the way in which you behave. So being in that kind of space, everybody was pretty respectful of each other and able to find their own space within that small space. So then when it transfer that into a house, behaviorally those levels of personal respect and the way of comportment. Is that word in English? That transfers across as well, for us and for the kids. That being said, when we come into a house, it's like, wow, we've got all this space and we've managed to fill it with junk in like no time at all. Which is pretty weird. I mean, little things that you see, just strange idiosyncrasies, like we don't leave the tap running when brushing teeth because that would be coming out of our water tank, which we would have to refill in the bus. So those things, but definitely. So I think there's just that feeling of respect for each other, for boundaries, for space, and for resources in general, be it water or electricity. I think that's come across without even really thinking about it.
Stacey, you mentioned homeschooling a minute ago, and I've got 2 questions to ask on this. So the first thing is, I wanted to know how you both juggle homeschooling with actually making money. So, because a lot of people can't homeschool their children, even though they want to, because they have to work to earn money. So how do you do that? Exactly. How do you juggle it, Matt? How do you juggle it, Stacey?
So I guess because we started homeschooling first, like they didn't go to a public or private school or anything. So that's just kind of what they know. And those are the habits that they got into. So we started that on the road, and that's what they're used to. So my whole goal as their teacher was just to make them independent learners. So I got them reading as quickly and early as I could, and just good study habits, like that's what we're doing. This is school. This is what we're doing. I guess, and they enjoy it, so I think it's just getting that habit early, and a good practice doing that like on their own really helps, because if they can do that, then you're more free to do what you need to do. So
so we can dip in and out. I mean, the other thing is also time. if you're homeschooling, your kids don't need as much time to learn the same amount that they would be in a day of school. So mostly, I think our kids probably study for 2-3 hours a day. And actually, we did give them the option of going to a local school when we arrived here in Scotland. It was a lovely little local school. And they were like, what time do they start? And what time do they finish? No, I don't think so. So, because they're used to having a shorter start. That being said, this is we're talking about like the classical education part of their education. So we're, the history, the maths, the English, etc. So that those kind of lessons, classes, they take maybe 2-3 hours, and the rhythm things are at the moment. We can, for example, this morning, we're talking with you guys, the kids are studying in the other room. If they need to know something, they'll wait until because they know we're going to be in here with you. But otherwise, we may be making chocolate. So we were making chocolate before we came on here.
Yeah.
And then whilst the chocolate's being made, if they ask a question, they can ask a question to Stacey or to me. And once Stacey set the classes for the day, we're able to sort of dip in and out and help them where necessary and where needed. And sometimes it can be a struggle because you have a lot on.
And the other thing with homeschool, it affords you the flexibility. So like, they on average it's 2 to 3 hours a day, but some days it's all day long, because we're doing a big project or a trip or whatever. And then some days we're just gonna skip school and do it later because we're doing this instead, and it's just, it's fitting it all in, but flexibly,
Yeah, that's nice.
And also, but we're talking about the official classes because there are other things as well that they learn by being at home. Because homeschooling is, actual school as we know it is a relatively recent social experiment. Right? For most of human history, we've just learned at home from family, from extended family, from your tribe or your community. So, and what we kind of miss, or a lot of kids will miss by being in school, is they're just surrounded by people their own age. So they're almost being raised by their peers. And if you're being raised by your peers, but these are people who don't really know any better than you. So it's the blind leading the blind. Whereas traditionally you would be raised by, adults, older children. You wouldn't be necessarily with kids the same age. So our kids do that. They learn off each other as well. But, just generally life skills, they're around to see the life skills that they're all accomplished musicians in their own right, and they're not that old to be that way, and they can go out and play their music. They take care of animals. They know how to do carpentry. They're whittling, making their own swords and shields for playing their games outside.
The swords are incredible, by the way. Like really, so cool.
They learn as they go along. They know sort of basic mechanics as well. Particularly the one who's more interested in that. So when things are happening, they all know how to make chocolate because they see it happening all the time, and they can get involved as and when they want to. So they pick up all of these skills. So by being at home, the school never stops. I mean, every day is a school day for everybody.
Is there any worries that you have when it comes to homeschooling? Like socialization would be the big one, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a question that most people ask, because that's I don't know why. It's like, if you homeschool, that's the question. How do you socialize? And I mean, I guess every homeschooling family is different. But like before we came here, obviously we were traveling a lot and mixing with a lot of different types of cultures and meeting people. So we were actively like pretty social as a family. And again, by default, they just see us socializing and they're intermixing with, different kids. And so adults, it was never really, and adults and all ages. So that was never really an issue. And even here, they've got like their rugby friends, and they're participating in other art groups and things like that with, so they're,
we take them down sometimes to the local school when they kick out local school. There's a park right outside, and kids play there, so they can play there. So they're
not like housebound, kids. They are out in the world, and also they, like Matt said, they really enjoy playing music. So they're they're out playing music, and because we do a lot of markets as well with our business, and they're in amongst the people as we're selling things and talking and festivals. And so they're just by our lifestyle, I think they're getting out, and they're really, they're not really shy kids.
And actually, one thing I'd like to add into that is, again, going back to the idea of intergenerational interaction. So they've always spoken with adults. They've, very old people and very young people, and they know how to grade. I mean, they know how to grade their language, their actual language, from Spanish to English, from American. They would ask water for Stacey, water to me, from young age. So they can, and they're able to grade their behavior. They can play like kids with kids. They can look after a little kid. They can, converse with an adult. And they've been able to develop those skills. I mean, you know the kids, so I mean,
yeah, they're fantastic. They're gorgeous.
I'd say like they're probably better socially than your average kid that goes to a normal school, like by far. Because most kids don't have the skill of being able to transition through the different age groups. Like when it comes to talking to an adult, they step behind their parent and kind of look up at the parent for like help.
Yeah.
Whereas your kids are like straight out there like hi, how are
you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think actually, meeting some homeschoolers that I've met just here, I think a lot of homeschoolers, they tend not to focus on screens a lot, and you can tell when the level of engagement that the kid has, and I think you can tell if they are on screens or not, because if they're not, then they're often more engaging. And a lot of homeschoolers that I've met, they don't do that, and they just have a higher level of engagement, I think.
Actually, I mean, when you asked the question, Josh, I was thinking about just regular kids. And I didn't want to say what you said, but my experience is that most of our children are more engaged and engaging than most other children that you will meet, and they do that thing of hiding, and they don't know how to quite interact. And I do think that's a legacy of using screens from a young age. You've got this thing. As human beings, we don't really, particularly when the brain is developing, we can't really differentiate between what's talking to us on a screen and what's actually a real human being. So you've got this thing talking to you in a screen, and a lot of, particularly the younger children, but you have, it's an engagement directly. This thing is talking to you, and you maybe start talking back, right? But it doesn't respond. So you have this kind of social awkwardness that can develop out of that, because there's no, it's like, well, why?
You're not forced to talking to me. Chat back to it.
Yeah, and there's no response. So actual interaction between human beings shouldn't be underestimated. And if you substitute that human interaction for screen time, so like using screens for babysitting, often that will backfire, because you think you're making your job easier, but in the long run, it's actually making things quite a lot harder. Because
and I think it's a good thinking about it. It could be great for your kids being a little bit starved of socialization, in the way of like, they have their own time, they study, they read books and stuff, and then when they get the opportunity to socialize, they're like, oh, thank God I can talk to someone, and they're out there talking to people. Instead of being at school where they're socializing, like they're over socialized, and then when they get home, they're like, I don't want to talk to you, I don't want to tell you about my day, I don't want to do anything. Like I just be in front of a screen and do nothing.
As a spoken like a true social introvert, Josh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm with you, man.
It'd be perfect for me.
Me too. So I think for the kids, actually, I think there's more. I wouldn't say necessarily starved of social interaction as much as there's a balance there. So they can dip in and out, and it would probably be bit different if they were one. We just have one child, but they have each other, so they do talk, and they have us, of course. The parents. so they can engage and be social at any time, and they are. And we every meal we sit down and eat together, and that's a social event 3 times a day. And then in between that, homeschooling is kind of social for them. And yeah, I wouldn't say they're starved of it, but I would say that they do appreciate different people to talk to, because they're just genuinely interested in okay, who's this person, and what they got to say, and they like messing with people as well. So they get up with other kids and they'll just mess with other kids, and then that's just they've got that and I get because I don't want to be around people all the time, but when I'm around people I enjoy it. And I'm interested in people. So
the pair of you seem really aligned in your family vision. Okay, it's like a vision that you both are completely aligned with, or it seems to be. So what advice would you give to other couples who are working to get on the same page about their family goals?
Like on the same page as each other.
Yeah, as each other. Yeah.
Or with
like, well, I'm just, because not everyone is like. So how have you two managed to be on the same page? And
we're fortunate insofar as that we are on the same page on a lot of things. Anyway, we have the same values, but we're also very different. We come from very different places, and we were raised very differently. Our family dynamics that we both came from are very, very different. So and even culturally we're different. The way that British people speak for Americans seems very kind of harsh and right, just like, wow, just said that. They don't realize they're joking,
I don't know how you found it with like being with an Aussie, first, but I found
it's even more.
English people are really reserved.
And
I tell people I spent the first 6 months knowing Matt like just being offended all the time.
Like Casey's parents were just offended like all the time.
I wasn't offended, but I really struggled sometimes, because he would, if somebody has got like an ailment, let's say they've got like their eye doesn't work or something. Being an Australian, Josh will just go, "Hey mate, what's wrong with your eye?" Whereas me being British, I will do everything I can not to look at the eye, not to not to mention the eye, not to do anything to do with the eye, and just treat the person as a person without the eye.
The person with the eye.
You go,
I got to talk about my eye. I never get to talk about it.
Yeah. So
this is why you don't see very many Australians and Americans, because the gulf is just too wide.
I mean, so every person, regardless if you are from the same culture or not, has their challenges, right? And so I mean, it's really helpful if you do find a person that you're on the same page with raising kids. What?
Well, no, I was going to say, a big part of it is actually, before you think about having kids, you should probably talk about this stuff, actually, because the advice I would give is that, and if you are pregnant, then it's that thing about like, when's the best time to plant a tree? Like 20 years ago, right? So better to rewind, right, to that point. If you already have kids and you're thinking about sort of adjusting the way in which you're raising them to make it easier for yourselves and better for your kids, the one thing that you can do is just make one agreement, a really important agreement, which is the disagreements that you have when it comes to raising kids are not discussed in front of the kids.
You want to show that you're on the same page, even if you're not. And if you're not, then you can be like, okay, let's talk behind closed doors and get this ironed out and figure it out, so that we are showing the kids, because like they are so smart, and they'll dad says this but mama thinks that, and so I'm gonna go with data over here. And like, it's in their heads really early on.
Well, it's the way we're programmed as human beings, to be fair. We're programmed to try and game the game, you know what I mean? It's just like that's how we're programmed. So if your parents have a united front, then you're like, okay, that's a solid wall, and it's not like it's a solid wall of comfort, actually, because also you're for them, psychologically, they feel more secure if you're both on the same page.
Yeah.
If Stacey's been particularly harsh, or if I'm being particularly harsh, or vice versa, and the other one's like, what, then they think, oh, is that behavior right? And from a kid's point of view, they look up at parents. I read this once that the children don't want to see you as being a monster. They can't handle that. That's hard for them. So if one parent is being undermined by the other, or contradicted in front of them, then there's like this idea that there's something wrong with that one, but the kid doesn't want to think there's something wrong with their parent intrinsically. That's kind of hardwired into us. So they tend to then think there's something wrong with themselves.
Yeah.
And that's not where you want it to go. So when you have parents who are disagreeing about the way the kid will probably most likely take that on, and it becomes slightly traumatic for them, insofar as, I mean, the word trauma is overused, but small with a small t, they have this feeling that, oh, okay, they're not sure how things, so maybe it's me, I'm creating this conflict now between my parents as well, so then they take that on themselves. So
it kind of makes me think of like the kids are like the house, and you guys are like the foundation, and like you can't have one part of the house like built on solid foundation like a concrete and the other bit on sand, because the whole house is going to fall over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Or chopping a leg out of a stool, it just doesn't. It's not going to work. But more than anything, it's like for their security and their emotional and psychological security, it's really important that parents are at least showing a united front for them, and it just helps them feel good, because kids actually thrive on boundaries. They like boundaries. They like to push them, like we all like to push a boundary. But if the boundary is pretty solid, that's a secure place for them to be.
I think kind of like having a plan, like a map of like, this is what we're doing and where we want to go as a family. If not, you're lost. Like you put your GPS on to get somewhere. Without that, you're stuffed. You'll be going all over the place. So.
Yeah, although we use maps, man.
So old school.
And
phone? What's a phone? We haven't got phones.
So I've got a question. So what makes a family successful?
What makes a family successful?
Yeah. What?
Do you want to field that one?
I mean, there's a lot of different things.
I think
we were talking about this idea of quality versus quantity, right? And I think there's a lot of emphasis on the quantity of things that you can have your kids do, like sign them up for this program and make sure they do this and these sports and doing and experiencing things are great, but I think there's a lack of quality time that kids can kind of miss, and I think quality time, as has been said, is really, really important. So, but I don't know. Sometimes
that's kind of that. I feel that's also stimulation versus engagement.
Yeah,
I think a lot of modern families are overstimulated, and this is not just for children but the parents as well, overstimulated, and obviously cell phones and social media have a big impact on that. So there's a lot of stimulation, and if you're overstimulated, it's very difficult to engage because you're kind of in a stress state, fight or flight, without even realizing that's like your baseline of being. So I think what makes a family successful would be a family that is engaged with each other, and I mean, I found what's a family's job essentially, with regard to children. I found, your job as a parent is to deliver the best adult you can into the world, right? So you just and but it's like a craft. You don't or an art. It's not something that you can. Those people who do art, whether it's music or painting or writing, whatever it is, a lot of it is inspiration. It just comes from sort of the beyond or whatever. Um, and with regard to kids, that it comes not from the beyond, but it comes from the kid itself, the child. So your role as a parent is to be able to nurture that child in its journey to becoming a good, happy, or contented at least adult, who can contribute to society and contribute to themselves, take care of themselves, take care of other people. So I think if you're going to measure success as a family, it would be your ability to be able to deliver those kind of children into the world, and and also to keep those bonds strong throughout.
So you were mentioning slightly there about the stimulation and how people are overstimulated. So are there like actionable steps people could make to reduce their stimulation so that they can be more engaged with their children?
Definitely. I think quitting coffee and taking up Claritea is definitely.
Yeah.
Claritea is amazing, by the way, guys, and we will put a link into their tea in the book notes. Is that what, show notes? But it is absolutely incredible, and we will talk about that just before the end of the show. But yeah, other than that,
so it's tough. Josh mentioned something really important a moment ago about making the plan. So having a plan, like ideally before you have the children, before they arrive into this world, you make a plan about how you want to do it. And I think we don't really do that. We just kind of inherit from society. What does everyone else say you have to do? I will just do that, and that is the default setting. But actually putting some thought into it, you can make a big difference, and so you make your plan of how you can do that, and so this involves managing your own personal levels of stress and stimulation first, right? So it's always really, really important to work on yourself. I mean, actually, before you get together with somebody else, you should really have a handle on who you are, and you should be together enough as a person, and that we're not all that great. I mean, I was a complete mess when I met Stacey. Some would say so now.
You're a work of art, it takes...
Yeah, exactly.
time.
I'm like a masterpiece. I'm a piece of work, maybe, I don't know. So no, yeah, so you do, and you work together as a couple, and you work on that, and then you work on how you're going to raising the kids. And the reason I went back to that is because like for us, one of the big things is not overstimulating with screens and things like that, or just in general. I think overstimulation isn't really healthy for human beings. So we don't do it ourselves either. And we had a friend of ours, or some friends of ours, they were having some trouble with their son. They sent him to be with us for a while. And one of the things, like most kids, he was a normal kid really, and is a great kid actually. But he's overstimulated. Being with us, he was able to sort of, it was an adjustment of just a few days, really. And by the end of his time with us, he was really a lot calmer as a person. And then when he went back to them, we talked about, well, he's doing, it's a monkey see, monkey do thing. So if the parents are stressed and the parents are looking at on their phone and stressing on that all the time, then the kid's going to be emulating that behavior. So it kind of begins with ourselves. So personally, then as a couple, obviously things like phones, things like computers, things, they all have their place. But the tail is wagging the dog these days,
Yeah, I think going back to what you said about what makes a successful family is really challenging like the cultural norm, because I don't think the cultural norm is healthy at all. And it's really hard to go against that, for various reasons. It's just because that's the way everything is going these days, and it's hard to kind of stand your ground and be like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to teach my kids this way, or I don't want them to have screens, or whatever it is, or I don't want them to eat this way. But everybody else is doing it. It's like, that's a challenge, right? Like peer pressure and everything. But I think you having a solid cultural foundation within your family is really the key, because if they feel comfortable and like at ease within their family, and they fit in within their family, they're not going to be so like drawn into those other ways that you don't want to have them be your bad habits or whatever it is.
Yeah, so we're desperate for some sort of validation. So it goes back stimulation versus engagement. So essentially, the bottom line really is, if you don't want them to be overstimulated, engage with them.
Yeah.
Take it down a level, just engage. Let your child be bored. That's one huge one. And it's not necessarily, we've talked a bit about screens, or quite a bit about screens. It's not just that. It's like when you have a child, everyone's, I don't know, people have this idea that you're going to make your kid a genius if you sit down with them and you show them how that triangle goes and that triangle thing, and you go, you do it, and then, hey, you're going to show, and it's just, man, just let them just play with it. They'll figure it out.
Well, I've witnessed a few things at your place, because me and Casey came to stay at yours, and I witnessed a few things that made us kind of want to get you on this podcast, which is all about success. And I witnessed like how successful you guys are a family, and that some of the things that stood out to me was the way that you guys all sit around the table, like you mentioned, and kind of chat together, but also the healthiness of the food that you eat, and how they just eat whatever food that you put on the table. Another thing that I witnessed was them going outside and their vast inner world. And I think it's all about, like you said, giving them that space and time that you would think would be boredom, but there's no real such thing. That's what we say to Naya all the time. Like, you're in charge. Like, how could you be bored? Like, you have a vast like galaxy inside your mind. Like, how dare you say that you're bored? Because like with your kids, when they go outside, they have like all different bases around the place. They have all different, like a whole different world existing in their imagination as you go outside into their realm. And it was so cool to witness. But one question on that, we kind of covered, like, how you get them to build that inner imagination. But how do you get them to be around a dinner table and eat the healthy food, like whatever food that you put in front of them? Because I think most parents would struggle with that. We struggle with that, to be fair. Our child just
eats vegetables, and she's really healthy stuff, but she won't eat anything mixed together.
So we have to make her meals separate. So it would be really nice to get some knowledge on that.
Well, I think this comes back to, so a lot of our techniques, and some of it, it was planned. We did have a plan beforehand, before having kids, and we talked about it a lot. And we were fortunate enough to see a lot of different cultures, and see how people can live, and know that other ways are possible. But most everything that any success that we've had has been more of a happy accident, and I guess for us, living in the bus, limited amount of room, limited, so we have there was a cooker, there was an oven. Stacey would bake bread every day, we would cook every day, but again, you have limited resource of water. You don't want to be making lots of different things. So and also we'd see, and to be fair, we had seen like different cultures. If you go to India, kids are eating curry, man. You know what I mean? Like they're not belly aching about the spice or any of that stuff, right? And so wherever you go, most places in the world, the kids are just eating what the parents are eating. And if they're like really, really small, mostly the parents are chewing it, and they're like the mother bird. Oftentimes a lot of cultures, they still do that. We wouldn't do that so much. We would mash up things, but we would definitely. There was only if it would come to meal times, we're only eating at that time. right? So we're not, and you have a small space, and you don't want to, have mess all around the space. So you want to make it easy for yourself as well.
So do you think we give them too much choice? Do you think we give our kids too many options?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so we would make like one pot meals, and that was what was on the menu. And if they're hungry, they're gonna eat it. I think that's fine because there's no other options.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'd give them, I mean, when they got a little bit older, they would say, okay, how much would you like? And they have as much as they would like. And then that our rule would be like, okay, you have to eat it,
Yeah. So whatever's on your plate, you have to eat. So you don't have to, you can put like one spoon on your plate, no problem, eat that. But that's the rule, is like, if it's on your plate, you have to eat it, because that comes to so respect for the food, for the vegetable or animal that's given its life for that meal, and also for the person who's prepared it. I think that a lot, I do feel that, some of us grew up with that, so you got to eat your dinner, and and it was very much you didn't want to have it, and it was kind of crap. So then we go the other way. You swing the other way. But for us, it's like, well, you can have as much as you like, but you got to eat it when it's on your plate. That's your food. If it's still in the pot, it can go for another day somewhere else. So I think it's just due to habit, really, Josh. That in answer to the question, really, you start them that way, and we started that way in the bus because we just wanted to have one pot meal. We're all going to eat, then we're going to clean everything up, and then we're not wanting to clean up bits of biscuit and stuff like that, off of couches and things. It's just a pain for us, so we never did it.
We keep it simple.
Yeah, we keep it simple.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And if they did want a snack, they'll, if we were all going to maybe have a snack of some kind, because of a lot of fruits, we'd be outside eating fruits. So you actually, you just have appropriate behaviors for different environments, and that was learned pretty early from our kids.
And if you want to know a cool thing that I think I think that is the reason of you guys being in close spaces. I think you have got really good at conflict resolution, and maybe that's why one of your key rules, like you have a few key rules that we haven't talked about, and one of them is truth, like being honest. And I think being in confined spaces with each other, you have to confront things straight away. And that builds that honesty and having to resolve things, and building that kind of tools to having a relationship with people. And so I think that's a massive one that comes out of living in confined spaces.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, actually, I'd advise anybody to live in a very small metal tube for at least the first 8 years of a child's life. If I was to give any advice, that would probably be it.
And if you make it to the end, you're good. You got a tight bubble.
It's not for everybody.
No, it's not for everybody. But actually, but the things that you do, you tend to, actually, I guess one other thing, going back to the meal thing, and it's a lot of the behavioural things as well. We were not, and what Stacey was saying also about, going against culture, we weren't really within any other kind of culture. So the only culture we had was within that bus, and anyone can recreate that wherever they are. Your culture of your family will be what it will be. And, there were times when the kids were like, okay, they didn't want to eat what they were eating, so they didn't eat it. We just give it to them the next meal. So they and actually, one other thing about the food as well is we both love food. We're both pretty passionate about food and healthy food and what we put in our bodies, and that's another thing for us, is that it really blows my mind that a lot of healthy food is considered to be dull or not as tasteless.
Or not
But
good.
But we have a passion for delicious food. This is and we have a passion for delicious whole foods, and that if you're passionate, you know, if you're introducing different kinds of food and you're passionate about it, and you're excited about it, and your kids will pick up on that, you know.
Yeah.
And the same way is, you know, a kid probably will know that after Halloween they're going to feel pretty grotty the next morning.
Oh yeah, Naya went out trick-or-treating,
Right.
and as we're trick-or-treating, she's like,
Yeah.
I don't like any of these sweets, because she doesn't like sweets, you know.
Yeah.
And she likes chocolate, but she doesn't like sweets. So
Yeah.
she's, you know, she's like, oh, I don't like any of these. What we'll do is when we get back home, we'll put them in the basket, and then we can give them to the other kids
Yeah.
that are trick-or-treating at the door. So we just got home, put all of the things she was really excited about, in the basket, and gave them away again. So
that's really cool. Oh, she's smart.
Yeah.
Like, but that thing about trick or treat, right? It's a really fun thing to do. So it's something that everyone wants to do. Kids know they're going to feel grotty if they've got any kind of awareness of their body. They know they're not going to feel great necessarily afterwards, but it feels great whilst you're munching it down, and it's a celebration, and it's, you know, it's a really cool thing to do. And it seems like every celebration, whether it's a party or whatever, a lot of it is just crappy food that's given out for us. Or alcohol, yeah. And
adults, yeah.
The sugar addiction just kind of transforms into alcohol addiction, essentially. Yeah. And it's a lot of it's to do with peer pressure and you know, or not necessarily peer pressure, but just being in that society, in that thing. So if like say saying, if you set the culture within your family, your celebrations actually, you know, you're going to be really excited about some homemade cake, which is delicious, and fruits and things. If you're excited about that, your kids will be excited about that. The same way as they get, you know, pulled along on the wave of Halloween. Wow, gonna go out, rah rah rah. You know, just take a trick treat, eat this. You know, like if you make it about that, you're excited about it, then that's gonna be infectious. They're gonna feel it, and they're gonna go with it as well. And then they'll realize that. Actually, if they get, this is a bit of a digression, but when they, like Naya, same thing, she doesn't want to eat the sweets. Our kids don't want to eat the sweets. You know, they will eat them sometimes. They're being social. You know, but they're just like, oh man, you know, I just don't feel good after that. So,
yeah.
And if your taste buds have been, you know, hijacked by white sugar and white flour, that's all that's going to taste good to you. You know, if you and you don't taste for rainbow anymore, you know.
Yeah, I think if you put healthy meals in front of them, you know, healthy whole foods, like they'll naturally enjoy it, you know.
Yeah, I guess the bad habit that I'm guilty of is like giving Naya healthy food that she will eat, but being scared of like giving her food that she won't eat and then her not eating. But if I had of, you know, if I had of just been like, okay, well, if you don't eat it, that's fine, and then let her have that kind of feeling of starvation and stuff. But I've always been too fearful of that.
Yeah.
And I think
I always put food on a plate that she doesn't eat, and then eventually she eats it.
Yeah.
But so it's just the opposite. Yeah.
So you need to go on the same
I know a friend of ours does that. I've heard that a lot though. But people are like, oh, they're not going to eat what I put in front of them, so I'll just give them this because I want them to eat something. They just want to get food in them, or like whatever it is. And it's like often the, you know, hijacked, you know.
Yeah, Carly, I remember a friend about, you know, we were at a friend's place, really good friends of ours, over in New Mexico, and I remember she, you know, like her son wouldn't eat. He wouldn't eat. I got him to eat vegetables. Actually, I got him to eat beets within meatballs. But he was, you know, he just really you know, you make a big old fuss at the dinner table, not hungry. And then as soon as everybody's finished, he'll come back, and at like 10 minutes later, I'm hungry, Mum, can I have ice cream? And she give him the ice cream, and I'm like, wow, man, you are so brave. You're so brave. Because I couldn't do that. I couldn't be that brave. I couldn't be brave like you. You know what I mean? You're just gonna because he's having like a ton of sugar on an empty stomach, and now I have a nightmare for the rest of the evening dealing with bouncing off the walls. And you know,
I think if kids are hungry, they will eat.
Yeah.
You know, they're not gonna starve. Like, especially if you have good food in the house. Like,
and any shortcuts you take, you got to pay for it later, because they'll want it the next time, won't they? So you got to deal with that.
I am really aware of the time here, guys. So I want to know a little bit before we finish and wrap up. We want to know about your cacao, your chocolate, and your tea. So tell us about what you do.
Okay.
Well, so
It's
I don't know if I
amazing, by
mentioned
the way.
before, we all of our boys were born in Ecuador. So that's where we met, and we have this really heart connection to Ecuador, and that's the cradle of cacao. It's where it comes from, and really good heirloom cacao. And I learned to make it whilst we were living there. And we recently went back and got a load of supplies in the form of cacao and started making chocolate again, raw chocolate here. And there's also
so people, so we were living on the road, and we spent a lot of time in Mexico as well. And in Mexico, there's much more of a the cacao culture is, coming through from the Aztecs, all through the Americas. There's a big culture to do with cacao. And as Stacey mentioned, the cradle of cacao, where the cacao was first cultivated, they've done the sort of DNA testing and everything else. But this one place is that it's the Upper Amazon region of Ecuador and southern Ecuador, northern Peru. And when we were in Mexico, we did a lot of cacao ceremonies. We drank in a ceremonial way. And when I was last in Ecuador, I was interested to know, and I never really explored when we were there. I mean, I enjoyed drinking cacao, and I drank cacao with indigenous people when I was working with tribes out there, and I didn't remember there ever being a particular kind of ceremony around it. So, and I was interested to find out if they ever had a ceremony. And when I was talking to, I went to see friends out in the sort of Upper Amazon region, and he's the Quechua people. And I was talking to them, and I said, has there ever been a thing? And they go, well, no, the only thing we do is we brew the cacao always, with the guayusa. And I was like, what? And I knew guayusa. It's a special kind of tea that they start the day with over there. And it's a tea which it brings mental clarity, it brings calm, focus, and energy. So, and then they start the day. They have this wonderful tradition where they wake up and they drink the guayusa, and they talk to each other. They talk about their dreams. They talk about anything that's happening. So again, there's that family element where they will, discuss any conflict. If children maybe need to be reprimanded, this is the time they'll do it before dawn. And all they do is they drink the guayusa. They'll maybe have some chonta, which is like a high fat fruit, like a date. And then they'll go out and they will hunt, they will gather, they will do all the things that they do in their day, and they won't eat again until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The other thing that guayusa has going for it is an appetite suppressant. They don't feel the need to eat. They have a big meal, and then they will have the guayusa again, but with cacao afterwards. And they will often have the cacao drinks in a ceremonial setting, i.e. like a wedding or a special occasion, they'll be drinking the cacao. But they always, when they brew the cacao, they brew it with the guayusa. And both guayusa and cacao have theobromine in them. So it was just really interesting to me that the one place where cacao has been cultivated the longest, the cradle of cacao, where it comes from, they only ever consume it with its sister plant, which is the guayusa. Guayusa is kind of a,
This is what we call clarity, by the way. So you're mentioning clarity. This is that.
Yeah, so I mean, guayusa is a difficult thing maybe for people in Britain to get their heads around saying. It's an alien word. It's not something so, but because it does bring clarity, we call it clarity, and we bring the guayusa. And so both our cacao and our guayusa, they're harvested from these things called chakras. Chakras isn't the yogic thing.
No.
It's the same. We use the same word. Funny enough. So a chakra is like a forest garden. So you need the intact rainforest there to be able to cultivate these things. And one of the big problems in the Amazon, and I work down there quite extensively, preserving in conservation work. And one of the big problems is this clashing of cultures. These guys who are down there, these families, they need ways in which to earn money now, where previously they probably wouldn't have. But now they're kind of coming in touch with our Western societies, or their version of it, so that the money becomes more of a thing. So then they're going logging the trees, they're gold mining, they're doing these things that they can do and be in the forest. So it's not really their fault that that's what's there and that's what the demand is there for. So by selling Claritea and Cocao products, we're actually supporting these indigenous communities to continue their way of life and just wild harvest these products that they have, which is so healing and so much benefit that we can take from them. And it doesn't affect the forest, it doesn't destroy the forest. In fact, it helps reforest, particularly Wayusa, because the Wayusa, they have to make more forest for it to be able to grow.
So you're giving them a reason to preserve the rainforest.
Yeah, that's so cool. If you've noticed that we have a bit less energy than we usually have, it's because we've run out of clarity and Mat and Stacey haven't been able to send us anymore.
It's on the way.
It's on the way, yeah. So we had those hurricanes in Florida a couple of weeks ago, and our Claritea was on its way from Ecuador.
It all blew away.
Well, it didn't blow away, but they stayed in the safe harbour and whilst it passed, but it's knocked it back a couple of weeks. Yeah. But it'll be arriving soon, and people can look on our website and find it there when the time comes.
Cool. I'll leave that in the show notes.
Right. So on that note, we have to go. Yes. We've got one last question for you, Mat and Stacey. Are you successful?
I would say so. Yeah.
Good. That's what we wanted to hear. Right. Thank you so much for being on the show. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate your wisdom.
You
guys. And it's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Good speaking to you guys. Take care.